I was staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, adjusting the hem of my dress for what felt like the 100th time. The office Christmas party wasn't supposed to be a big deal, just another corporate event, but I couldn't shake this mix of excitement and dread bubbling inside me. I smoothed my hair and tried to remind myself that it was just a night out with colleagues, nothing more. But honestly, part of me was craving attention, some kind of thrill. After all, life with Mark had settled into this predictable rhythm. Work, home, dinner, TV, sleep. Nothing wrong with it, but boring. I slipped into my heels and checked my phone one last time. I sent Mark a quick text. Have fun tonight. Not even thinking. I thought he would stay home tonight, maybe go to that friend's poker game he mentioned. I didn't even consider he might actually be at the same party. My mind was elsewhere, buzzing with nerves. Walking into the office, I immediately felt the hum of chatter and laughter. People were mingling, holding glasses of wine, and complimenting each other on outfits. I tried to blend in, but I couldn't stop scanning the room. That's when I noticed Christopher, my boss. He was standing near the punch table, holding a glass, looking more relaxed than I'd ever seen him at work. He caught my eye and gave me this half smile, that kind of knowing smile that made me feel seen. "Emily, there you are," he said, making his way toward me. His voice was casual, but there was something in the tone that made my stomach flutter. "You look amazing tonight." I felt a blush creep up my neck. "Oh, thanks, Christopher. You, look good too," I said, trying not to sound too flustered. He laughed lightly, and there was a pause. Just the two of us in the middle of a crowded room, and yet it felt like a private moment. "You know, I don't think I've ever seen you like this outside of the office. It suits you." I shrugged, playing it off like it was no big deal, but my heart was racing. "I guess it's just the party mood." "Maybe," he said, leaning slightly closer. "Or maybe it's something else." I felt a shiver run down my spine. I knew I should step back, remind myself who I was married to, but instead I found myself leaning in slightly, caught up in the attention. "You're dangerous, you know that?" I teased, even though my voice sounded more breathless than intended. Christopher laughed, a deep, low laugh that seemed to vibrate somewhere in my chest. "Dangerous?" He tilted his head, eyes sparkling with mischief. "I prefer intriguing." I chuckled, nervously tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "Well, you certainly are that." Somehow, without realizing it, we were walking together toward the balcony. I didn't know why I agreed to go. Part of me wanted to see where this would lead. Another part told me to stop, to remember Mark waiting at home. But the air outside was crisp, the city lights sparkling, and I felt alive. We talked about work at first, and then about small personal details. Vacations, family, little stories we never shared at the office. Every laugh, every glance made me feel lighter, like I had temporarily escaped the weight of my normal life. I told myself it was innocent, just a conversation. But I could feel the chemistry, undeniable and pulsing. "You know," Christopher said, stepping a little closer, "I've noticed something about you. You hide a lot behind that professional mask. But tonight, you're different. Freer. More you." I swallowed hard. I guess I am," I admitted, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Sometimes I forget that people notice when I'm just me." He smiled, and it wasn't the boss smile anymore. It was personal. "Well, I notice," he said softly, "and I like it." My heart jumped. "Christopher." I started, and then stopped. Words failed me. I didn't want this, I told myself. I had Mark. I loved Mark. But at the same time, I wanted to feel wanted, craved, alive in a way I hadn't felt in months. I felt a flutter of panic and thrill at the same time. "I shouldn't be standing out here," I whispered, trying to catch my breath. He leaned closer, just a fraction, and I could feel his presence. "Why not?" he asked gently. "It's just us for a moment. No one else matters." The boldness in me, the part of me that had been bored and lonely, That part whispered, maybe it's okay, just this once. I laughed nervously. You're really testing me tonight. He laughed too, low and warm. Maybe I am. We stayed there for a while, talking, laughing, brushing against each other in fleeting, charged touches. Every word, every glance felt dangerous, and that danger was intoxicating. I could hear the laughter and chatter from the party inside, but out here it felt like a different world. A world where I mattered in a way I hadn't at home for a long time. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced down. It was Mark. My heart sank a little. I hadn't expected him to text. My thumb hovered over the screen, and on impulse, I typed a quick message. Having fun, don't wait up, and hit send, before realizing how strange it sounded. I quickly dismissed the thought, focusing back on Christopher, but the guilt stirred faintly in the pit of my stomach. He noticed my distraction. Everything okay? I smiled, trying to hide my sudden anxiety. Yeah, just work stuff. He nodded, and I felt this ridiculous mixture of relief and guilt. Relief that he didn't ask further, guilt that I had lied, even to myself. The city lights twinkled behind him, and for a brief moment, I let myself forget everything else. The rules, the commitments, the life waiting for me outside this balcony. All I could feel was this. The attention, the thrill, the way my heart raced. And I knew, deep down, that the night had only just begun. After a few minutes on the balcony, I felt the shift. It was subtle at first, just the way Christopher's hand brushed mine when he gestured, the way his eyes lingered a second too long. I told myself I was imagining it, but I wasn't. Every glance, every word between us carried a weight I hadn't felt in years. I could feel my pulse in my throat, my palms suddenly warm. Emily, he started, voice low, you seem different tonight. Softer. More daring. I laughed nervously, trying to play it off. Daring? I don't know about that. But inside, I was aware of the truth. I was daring, more daring than I had ever allowed myself to be with Mark. More daring than I thought I could be. Christopher tilted his head, studying me like he could see right through me. I like it. You have this energy. Something you hide every day at work. I felt my stomach twist. The temptation to confess, to acknowledge how much I craved this attention, was almost overwhelming. Maybe I hide it because no one notices. Not really, I admitted quietly. He smiled, the kind of smile that made me feel both safe and exposed. I notice, he said simply. I laughed, covering my mouth with my hand, heart racing. You're going to make me blush. Good, he replied. You should. You deserve it. That simple statement, you deserve it, sent a jolt through me. I had been feeling invisible for months, and here was someone, my boss no less, telling me I deserved attention, desire, admiration. I wanted to argue, to say I had Mark, that I was married, but the words didn't come. All I could do was lean slightly closer, drawn in by this unexpected intimacy. He laughed softly, noticing my hesitation. Relax, you're safe here, no judgment, no obligations. I wanted to tell him to stop. Part of me knew this was dangerous, that I was treading a line I shouldn't. But the thrill, the sheer exhilaration of feeling wanted again, it clouded my better judgment. We talked about work, at first superficially, but the conversation quickly turned personal. He asked about my family, about my childhood, about my life outside the office. Each question seemed innocent enough, but the tone, the way he looked at me, made it feel charged. I found myself sharing things I hadn't shared with anyone, secrets, worries, fears. I could feel the chemistry building, subtle but undeniable. You know, he said, voice dropping slightly, I feel like I could talk to you for hours. Just everything. I feel the same, I admitted, startled by my own confession. There it was, the line, the spark, the undeniable pull that I had tried to ignore. I knew I was walking into dangerous territory, but it felt like a relief to finally acknowledge it, even silently. Emily, he said, moving a fraction closer. I'm going to be honest. I'm attracted to you, more than I should be, but I can't help it. My heart skipped. Christopher, we can't. My voice faltered, and I felt the weight of the word married pressing in. But I didn't pull away. Not really. Not completely. He reached out, a fleeting touch to my arm, and I felt a jolt of electricity. I told myself it was just a touch. Innocent. But it wasn't. It was the first step, and I knew it. I laughed nervously, trying to break the tension. This is risky. He smiled, eyes warm, voice low. I know. But sometimes the best things are risky. The air between us was heavy now, charged. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands clammy. Every instinct told me to stop, to step back, to remember Mark waiting at home. But another louder voice whispered, "You deserve this. You need this. Just this once." And I gave in. I let the conversation become more intimate, more teasing. Flirtatious touches, a brush of his hand against mine, lingering glances. My mind was a tangle of excitement and guilt. I shouldn't be doing this. But it feels so right. I can't believe I'm saying this, I whispered, almost to myself. But I feel alive tonight. Like, really alive. He looked at me, that soft, intense gaze, and smiled. That's exactly how I want you to feel. Alive, free, wanted. I felt a thrill I hadn't felt in years. I justified it immediately. It's not about hurting Mark. It's about me. Just this once. I need it. I deserve it. At some point, I realized I had been standing close to him for longer than I intended. My chest was tight, my mind spinning. I laughed nervously, trying to regain composure. I should probably get back inside, I said, glancing toward the open doors. He nodded slowly. Yeah, probably. But then he added softly, don't let this night just pass. Enjoy it. I felt a warmth spread through me, a mixture of thrill and guilt. I knew this was a line I couldn't uncross, but at that moment, I didn't care. The excitement, the attention, the feeling of being desired, it was too intoxicating. My phone buzzed again. I glanced at it, and my heart sank slightly. Mark, I hope he's not on his way. I quickly typed something vague. Just talking with some colleagues, having fun, and sent it without thinking too much. My hands were shaking, and I felt a pang of guilt. But Christopher didn't notice. Or maybe he did, and he didn't care. He just smiled at me, and that smile, God, it made me feel like nothing else in the world mattered. For the rest of the evening, we stayed on that balcony, stealing moments, sharing laughs, and brushing against each other in fleeting, almost imperceptible ways. Every moment felt dangerous, thrilling, intoxicating. And through it all, I justified my actions, whispering to myself, it's just a moment. I need this. I deserve this. It doesn't mean I love Mark any less. I just need to feel alive again. By the time we finally stepped back inside, I was buzzing with adrenaline, nervous laughter, and guilt all tangled together. I had crossed lines I didn't think I could, yet I couldn't stop myself. And deep down, I knew this night was only going to get more complicated. I was laughing at something Christopher had said, leaning slightly closer than I probably should have, when I caught sight of him. Mark, standing near the drinks table, holding a glass of wine, looking exactly like he always did when he was puzzled or slightly annoyed. And the worst part? He was looking right at me. My stomach dropped. My heart slammed against my ribs. I froze mid-laugh, my mind going completely blank. How could I have forgotten he might come? How could I have been so careless? Christopher noticed immediately. Emily? He asked, a hint of confusion in his voice. I barely registered his question. My eyes were locked on Mark. He looked calm on the outside, but I could see it. The suspicion, the curiosity in his eyes. He didn't smile. He didn't say hello. He just stared, and I felt exposed, naked in a way that had nothing to do with the dress I was wearing. I forced a laugh, trying to cover the sudden panic. Mark, I didn't know you'd be here. I said, my voice slightly higher than normal, betraying my nerves. He raised an eyebrow, taking a slow sip of his wine. I could say the same. I thought this was a work thing. For you, he said, voice calm but with an edge I couldn't ignore. Christopher, noticing the tension, finally stepped back slightly, giving me space. I'll just, he said, moving toward the balcony door. Enjoy your night, you two. I muttered a hurried thanks, trying to steady myself as he left. The moment he was gone, Mark's eyes were still on me. And suddenly, all the adrenaline and thrill of the evening turned into a crushing weight of guilt. Emily, who were you just talking to? He asked softly, but there was this underlying tone that made me want to curl up and disappear. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed at me to hide the truth, to make up some harmless excuse. Oh, just some colleagues. Just talking, nothing important, I replied, trying to sound casual. My voice trembled slightly, though I hoped he didn't notice. Mark didn't move closer. He just studied me, his expression unreadable. Emily. Really? I bit my lip, heart pounding. Yeah, really. And I lied again, feeling it scrape against my conscience. But I couldn't admit anything, not yet, not here. There was a pause, and in that pause, I felt the enormity of what I had done. The flirting, the touches, the emotional closeness. Every memory made my stomach churn. I hated myself for it, but part of me also wanted to justify it, to protect myself from the shame. It wasn't real. It was just a moment. I didn't cross the line. I didn't. I tried to convince myself, but the truth was sticking to me like glue. I just needed someone to talk to, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. Someone who understands work stuff, the stress. That's all. Mark's gaze softened for a fraction, but the suspicion didn't leave his eyes. Emily, you don't usually get like this. I mean, you never. I don't know. This isn't you. I swallowed hard, looking away for a moment, trying to hide the flush on my cheeks. I guess I just felt free tonight. That's all, I muttered. He frowned. Free? I nodded quickly. Yeah, free. Like, I don't know, I could just talk, laugh, relax. That's it. Emily. His tone softened, but there was still an edge of warning. I know something's going on. I can feel it, and I don't like it. I froze, feeling tears prick my eyes. Part of me wanted to cry, to confess everything. Part of me wanted to defend myself, to explain that it wasn't what he thought, that it was just a moment, that I didn't love him any less. I didn't. It's complicated, I whispered, almost to myself. I didn't mean for it to happen. I felt lonely. I didn't think about what it would do to you. Mark's face softened, but he still looked hurt. Emily, we promised each other honesty. Always. You? This feels like a betrayal, even if nothing physical happened. But I can feel it. I know something. I nodded, my chest tightening. I know you do. And I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry. I don't understand, he said quietly, more to himself than to me. Why? Why would you need that? I thought we were okay. I shook my head, tears threatening to fall. We are okay. We're good. But sometimes I don't feel like I'm enough. And it's not about you. It's about me, my emptiness, my boredom. I just needed to feel alive. That's all. I swear. I didn't want to hurt you. He looked at me, eyes searching mine, and I could see the mix of pain, confusion, and love in them. And in that moment, I wanted to disappear, to explain everything and justify every choice I'd made that night. But the words felt clumsy and inadequate. I wish you'd told me, he said finally, voice quiet, almost broken. I wish you'd said something instead of sneaking around in my own backyard, in a way. I know, I whispered, feeling the tears slide down my cheeks now. I know, I messed up. I really did. But I didn't. I didn't cross the line physically. I swear. It's just feelings, emotions. And I panicked. I was scared you'd be mad. I, I just, I didn't know what to do. Mark looked at me silently for a long moment, and I felt the tension crackling between us. I hated myself for the lie, hated myself for the betrayal, hated myself for needing someone else's attention. And yet, I still craved understanding, forgiveness, a reassurance that he still loved me despite everything. Finally, he sighed and rubbed his forehead. Emily, I don't know what to do right now, but we need to talk. Really talk, not just this little exchange. I nodded, biting my lip. I know, we'll talk, I promise. Even as we returned to the party, I felt the weight of everything pressing down. The thrill of the evening had evaporated, leaving only guilt, fear, and the bitter taste of my own weakness. And deep down, I knew the night wasn't over. Not really. I knew there would be more conversations, more explanations, and the unavoidable confrontation with the consequences of what I'd done. The rest of the evening was a blur. Mark and I stayed in the same room, but it felt like we were separated by an invisible wall. I laughed when I had to, nodded when someone spoke to me, but most of the time my mind was elsewhere, replaying the confrontation, analyzing every look, every word. I kept stealing glances at Mark, trying to read his expression without him noticing. He looked calm, composed, but I could feel the tension radiating off him like heat from a fire. I wanted to explain everything, justify myself, make him understand that what had happened with Christopher wasn't about him, or at least it wasn't supposed to be. It was about me. My own emptiness, my craving for attention, my need to feel alive again. I kept repeating it in my head. It's not about him. It's about me. I didn't do anything physical. I didn't cheat. I just let myself feel something I hadn't in years. But even as I whispered the words to myself, I knew they sounded hollow. I had crossed emotional boundaries, flirted in ways I shouldn't have, and let myself get carried away. And now Mark had seen the cracks, the part of me I had tried to hide. We ended up at the dance floor for a short while. Mark didn't pull me close like he normally would. He didn't laugh the same way he used to. I could feel the distance growing, and with every step, my guilt deepened. I wanted to hold his hand, to apologize again, to promise that it would never happen. But the words felt inadequate. How do you fix something like this with words alone? Later, we stepped out to the balcony for some air. I leaned against the railing, trying to breathe, to make sense of the chaos in my chest. Mark joined me quietly, not touching me, just standing there. I'm trying to understand, Emily, he said finally, voice low. I really am. But right now, it hurts. Not because of what you did physically, but because of how easily you let yourself drift. How easily you let someone else notice you in ways I thought I did. I nodded, tears slipping down my cheeks. I know, I see that now. And I hate myself for it. I really do. But please, please know, it wasn't about you. It was never about you. It was me, my need to feel alive. I didn't mean to hurt you, I swear. He sighed, looking out over the city lights. I know, I want to believe you, but it's going to take time. And I need to see that you understand why this hurt me. I do, I whispered, my voice breaking. I get it, I really do. And I'll do everything I can to make it right. To make you feel secure again. To make us again. There was a long silence. I wanted him to forgive me instantly, to pretend none of it had happened. But I knew forgiveness wasn't instant. Trust wasn't instant. And honestly, I wasn't sure if I deserved it yet. We eventually went back inside, keeping our distance, but still together. The party had started winding down, and people were saying their goodbyes. I watched Mark interact with colleagues, noticing how he carried himself, how people seemed to gravitate toward him naturally. And I realized something. He was always enough. I had just forgotten that for a moment. As we walked to the car, the night air cool against my flushed skin. I finally allowed myself to speak the thoughts I'd been holding back. Mark, I need you to know something. I'm not proud of what I did. I can't take back the feelings I let myself have, but I can promise you, I'll do better. I'll work on myself, on us. I don't want to lose what we have. He glanced at me, his expression softening slightly. I don't want to lose us either, but Emily, you need to understand that this changes things. I can't just pretend it didn't happen. I know, I said quietly, biting my lip. I'm not asking you to. I want a chance to prove that I'm committed to you, that I love you, that you're the one I choose every day, even when I make mistakes. We drove home mostly in silence, the city lights blurring past the windows. My hands gripped the steering wheel a little too tightly, and I could feel Mark watching me, waiting for me to say more, to explain more. But I had said all I could for now. Actions, not words, would have to prove my commitment. When we finally got home, I went straight to our bedroom, my body heavy with exhaustion, guilt, and relief. Mark followed after a moment, sitting on the edge of the bed. I wanted to reach for him, to hold him, to beg for forgiveness in his arms, but I paused. I knew it wouldn't be that simple. I'm going to need time, he said softly. And I need to see that you're honest with yourself, that you understand what happened and why it hurt me. I do, I whispered, tears streaming now freely. I understand. And I will. I promise. I'll do everything I can to make this right. He nodded slowly, and for a moment, we just sat there, two people caught in the aftermath of a night that had started with laughter and excitement and ended with heartbreak and reflection. As I lay in bed later, staring at the ceiling, I replayed the evening over and over. Every laugh, every glance, every touch with Christopher, every word exchanged with Mark. I hated myself for what I had done, but I also understood why it happened. I had felt invisible, unnoticed, craving attention, craving validation. It wasn't fair to Mark, it wasn't fair to anyone, but it was human. I told myself I wouldn't let it happen again. I would work on us, on myself, on the ways I let my boredom and loneliness steer my actions. I would make Mark see that he was enough, that he always had been. And yet, deep down, I knew this night would linger in my mind forever. A reminder of weakness, desire, and the complexity of being human. I had flirted with danger, and I had been caught, but I had also been honest with my feelings, with my mistakes, and, in the end, that honesty might be the only thing that could save us. I reached over and held Mark's hand gently. He didn't squeeze back, not yet, but he didn't pull away either. And for the first time since that confrontation, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe we could get through this. Maybe we could rebuild. Maybe, just maybe, love could survive even the moments when it almost didn't. And as I drifted off to sleep, I promised myself one thing. I would never forget this lesson. I would never take him for granted again. I would never let myself be so reckless. And I would fight for us, no matter how hard it was, no matter how much I had hurt him and myself in the process. Weeks had passed since that night, but the memory of it lingered like a shadow I couldn't shake. Mark and I were slowly finding our rhythm again, learning to talk openly about things we had ignored for years. It wasn't easy. There were moments when his gaze lingered too long, searching for signs I wasn't ready to admit. And there were moments when I caught myself remembering Christopher's smile, the thrill of that night, and my stomach would twist with guilt. But the difference now was honesty. We were talking, really talking, for the first time in a long time. I told him about my feelings of emptiness, my boredom, the loneliness I had tried to hide behind polite smiles and work. And he listened. Not with judgment, but with a quiet patience that surprised me. We were learning to rebuild trust, brick by brick. Simple gestures like holding hands without distraction, sharing small laughs over coffee, even just sitting together in silence, were becoming anchors. I realized how much I had taken for granted, how much I had needed to see him, not just as a husband, but as a partner. As a man who loved me through everything. I didn't see Christopher anymore. I didn't need to. The memory of that night became a cautionary tale, a mirror showing me my weaknesses and my desires, but also my capacity for remorse and change. I understood now that being alive didn't mean chasing fleeting thrills. It meant cherishing the people who made life worth living, even when it wasn't perfect, even when it was routine. Mark and I weren't perfect, and maybe we never would be. But we were trying, and sometimes trying was enough. The night had almost broken us, but in its aftermath, we found a deeper understanding of each other and of ourselves. And as I lay in bed next to him, feeling his steady breathing, I whispered a silent promise. Never again. Never again would I let desire blind me. Never again would I forget what truly mattered.